The Senate passed President Trump's $4.5 trillion big, beautiful bill with a tie-breaking vote. UPenn bans trans athletes to settle a Title IX case. Lululemon sues Costco over alleged knockoff athleisure gear. And a very common drink is scientifically proven to cause nightmares, which I'll tell you about in the podcast extra section. And today's trivia question: how many copies of the original Declaration of Independence still exist today? It's Wednesday, July 2nd. This is the Flyover Podcast. Welcome to the Flyover Podcast, taking you above the noise for an unbiased, high-altitude view of today's headlines with daily coverage that's honest and refreshing. Let's cruise the news and land the facts. Good morning and welcome to the Flyover Podcast. I'm your weekday host, Ayla Brown. There's been a lot happening in the world and we're inching closer to the July 4th holiday. So let's take off with the biggest headlines of the day. The Senate has passed President Trump's massive One Big Beautiful Bill Act with a 50-50 split and Vice President J.D. Vance casting the tie-breaking vote. The $4.5 trillion package locks in President Trump's 2017 tax cuts, costing $3.8 trillion, and cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid and $300 billion from food stamps over the next decade. It also includes $350 billion for border security, with funding for the border wall, detention beds, and a goal of 1 million annual deportations. Other provisions include $25 billion for a new Golden Dome missile defense system and $40 million for a National Garden of American Heroes. 3 Republicans, Susan Collins, Tom Tillis, and Rand Paul, voted no, mainly over Medicaid cuts and the $5 trillion debt ceiling hike. Now, the House, where Republicans hold a narrow 220 to 212 edge, faces pressure to pass it by President Trump's July 4th deadline. Next, the University of Pennsylvania has agreed to ban transgender athletes from women's sports and revoke Leah Thomas's 2022 NCAA titles as part of a Title IX settlement with the Trump administration's Education Department. Announced yesterday, the agreement requires UPenn to adopt biology-based definitions for sports and facilities, restore awards to impacted female athletes, and issue apology letters to swimmers like Paula Skalin. The department found that Thomas's participation violated Title IX, affecting 15 athletes across 37 events. UPenn must now publicly affirm that males cannot compete in or access women's sports facilities. And Lululemon is suing Costco, accusing the retailer of copying its popular athleisure wear under the Kirkland signature brand. Filed June 30th in federal court in Seattle, the lawsuit claims Costco misleads shoppers by suggesting its $18 yoga pants and jackets are made by the same manufacturers as Lululemon's $98 to $128 items, violating trademark and trade dress laws. Lululemon is asking for a jury trial, triple damages, and an injunction to stop sales, saying $1.8 billion in 2024 revenue is at stake. Costco, though, hasn't commented and hasn't faced previous rulings on athleisure lookalikes. Here's what's happening in politics today. President Trump and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem are warning that CNN journalists, specifically national security reporter Natasha Bertrand, could face prosecution for reporting on a leaked Pentagon assessment of U.S. airstrikes on Iran and a new ICE enforcement tracking app. President Trump called for Bertrand's firing in a June 25th Truth Social post, labeling her reporting on the June 21st strikes fake news, even though the Pentagon confirmed a 4 to 6 month setback to Iran's nuclear program. Noem also criticized CNN for revealing details about an ICE app that tracks deportations, accusing the network of helping cartels by exposing its geolocation features. Next, a federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration's plan to lay off 40% of Health and Human Service employees, about 32,000 jobs. On June 30th, Judge Christopher Cooper ruled the move violated federal labor laws and caused irreparable harm. The layoffs were part of Trump's Make America Healthy Again initiative, led by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and aimed to cut $200 billion in spending. But the judge said the administration failed to give the required 60-day notice under the WARN Act. Next, Attorney General Pam Bondi said on June 25th that the FBI is reviewing tens of thousands of videos linked to Jeffrey Epstein, many involving children or child pornography, and potentially hundreds of victims. The claim, reported by the Miami Herald, has raised eyebrows since no such evidence has appeared in court records from Epstein's past cases. Bondi's earlier Phase 1 release of Epstein files back in February drew criticism for being light, just 200 mostly public pages. Responding to Rep. James Comer's claim that evidence was destroyed, Bondi says the FBI, now led by Director Kash Patel, is actively reviewing the material, but there's no timeline for results. Today's episode is powered by Fatty 15. You know, aging isn't just about getting older. It's about what's happening inside of our cells. Scientists now know that a lack of C15, which is an essential fatty acid newly discovered after 90 years, can lead to something called cellular fragility syndrome. That affects your energy, sleep, your joints, pretty much everything. Fatty 15 is here to change that. It's vegan, science-backed, and developed with help from the U.S. Navy. You can start feeling better in just weeks and get 15% off when you go to fatty15.com/flyover15. And don't forget, use the code flyover15 at checkout. And by the way, you can also click on the link in the show notes below. Here are some bonus stories just for listeners of the Flyover Podcast. The U.S. Justice Department has charged more than a dozen people, including 4 North Koreans and several Americans, in a major fraud scheme that funneled millions to North Korea's weapons programs. Using stolen U.S. identities, the group landed remote IT jobs at Fortune 500 companies, ran laptop farms in 16 states, and laundered over $5 million through crypto mixers. The victims spanned industries from California to Georgia. Officials say the operation is a growing national security threat as North Korea uses fake workers to steal both cash and sensitive intel. Next, former Rep. Colin Allred is jumping back into the U.S. Senate race just 8 months after losing to Ted Cruz. This time, the Texas Democrat is setting his sights on Senator John Cornyn's seat in 2026. Launching his campaign with a pledge to fight corruption, Allred also took aim at Cornyn and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. A former NFL player, Allred highlighted his working-class roots and vowed not to take corporate PAC money. Republicans, meanwhile, say he's too liberal for Texas. His entry sets the stage for a high-stakes and likely crowded Senate race. And a new Canadian study suggests that people with lactose intolerance may be more likely to have nightmares after eating dairy before bed, especially milk. Researchers surveyed 1,000 students and found that a strong link between food allergies and bad dreams exist, cheese being the top culprit. Women were more likely to report both nightmares and food sensitivities, and late-night snacking in general was flagged as a sleep disruptor. While more research is needed, scientists say cutting back on dairy might help some folks sleep a little more peacefully. That's what we all need, right? And that's your podcast extra roundup. Don't forget, every morning I give you more exclusive content, and that will happen again tomorrow. Coming up, EA Sports revives college basketball after a 15-year break. And scientists identify a woman in Paris with a brand new, one-of-a-kind blood type called Guada negative. I'll tell you all about that right around the corner. In finance, U.S. luxury spending dipped 1.7% year over year in May, but high-end jewelry bucked the trend, jumping more than 10%. Affluent women ages 25 to 54, especially those earning over $200K, are driving the shift. Meanwhile, lab-grown diamonds are booming as buyers lean toward ethical and experience-driven choices over traditional status symbols. In Cape Coral, Florida, once a pandemic housing hotspot, is now the weakest housing market in the United States. Median home prices fell 11% from late 2023 to January 2025, dropping to $365,000. Post-Hurricane Ian, overbuilding pushed inventory up nearly 38%, with almost 45% of listings seeing price cuts. Add in 6.7% mortgage rates, soaring insurance costs, and fading investor interest. That's probably why. Next, the Economic Policy Institute just launched a new interactive tool that lets you compare your income to top CEOs, and the results are pretty staggering. According to EPI, someone making $85,000 a year would need over 1,900 years to earn what Apple's Tim Cook made in 2024, which was $99.2 million. Here's a stock market update. The Nasdaq dipped 0.82%. The S&P 500 slipped slightly by 0.11%. The Dow, though, moved in the opposite direction, up 0.91%. Bitcoin dropped 1.14%, while gold rose 1.68% to $3,349 an ounce. And the big stock mover of the day was Bitmine Immersion Technologies. It shot up nearly 36% after announcing a bold $250 million plan to buy Ethereum as part of a new treasury strategy. Investors clearly liked what they heard. In sports, the WNBA is officially expanding, adding 3 new teams in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, bringing the league to a record 18 teams. Each franchise is backed by NBA ownership. Toronto and Portland are already set to join in 2026 as the tempo and yet-to-be-named team. No word yet on expansion plans beyond 2030. Speaking of basketball, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just signed the richest annual deal in NBA history, a 4-year, $285 million Supermax extension with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The contract averages $71.25 million a year, and coming off an MVP and Finals MVP season where he led Oklahoma to a 68-win year and their first NBA title, he could have waited for a 5-year, $380 million deal in 2026, but by locking in now and get this, representing himself, he saved an estimated $11 million just in agent fees alone. And I feel like this is a lot of basketball today, but I'm not complaining since I love basketball. EA Sports is bringing back college basketball for the first time since 2010, announcing a new game set to release in 2028. Inspired by the success of College Football 25, the game will feature both men's and women's NCAA basketball, include over 100 schools, and offer NIL compensation to players. I'm not a video game girl, but that actually sounds pretty fun. In science and tech, a 68-year-old woman from Guadeloupe, now living in Paris, has been identified as the only known carrier of a brand new blood type called Guada negative. Announced in June of this year by the International Society of Blood Transfusion, it's now the 48th recognized blood group system. The name Guada comes from Guadeloupe's nickname, and researchers are now screening local donors since most rare blood types are inherited. Paris has closed the Eiffel Tower summit through July 3rd due to extreme heat as a heat dome pushes temperatures to 104 degrees with a heat index of 110. The move impacts about 20,000 daily visitors and comes after 2 heat stroke cases at the summit, where elevators tend to trap heat. Cooling stations are now set up at the tower's base, and despite the heat, 70% of Paris hotels are still fully booked. MIT engineers have developed a new bubble wrap device that pulls drinking water from the air, even in extreme places like Death Valley. Announced on June 30th, the $50 hydrogel domes use water-absorbing polymers to soak up moisture overnight and release it during the day. No electricity needed. Each unit can produce up to 2/3 of a cup of water daily, and testing shows it outperforms current air harvesters by 30%. The breakthrough could offer a scalable solution for the 1 billion people living in water-scarce regions. Coming up, why calling it Wimbledon might earn you a polite glare, and the strict dress code, phone rules, and fashion faux pas you'll want to avoid at the championships. I'll tell you about that next. Once again, it's my favorite day of the week, Wisdom Wednesday in today's Rotator section. A new Psychology Today article by Dr. Samantha Rodman-Witten says couples who answer no to 4 key questions about mutual respect, communication, shared goals, and emotional intimacy are often less happy than they think. In a 2024 study of 500 couples, 75% reported lower relationship satisfaction, and 60% didn't even realize it until prompted by these questions. Experts suggest tools like journaling or couples therapy to help work through hidden disconnects. Next, a global study published in Scientific American has pinpointed 6 personality traits that define coolness across cultures: charismatic, authentic, creative, confident, rebellious, and empathetic. The study found that 70% of participants admire people who challenge norms but still inspire. And lastly, a new Harvard Business Review article highlights 110 actionable social goals, like active listening, networking, or weekly volunteering that can boost things like relationships, your confidence, and overall well-being. Based on a study of 1,200 professionals, consistent social engagement led to a 25% jump in job satisfaction, a 20% drop in stress, and improved mental health for 80% of participants. By the way, I don't have time to go through all 110 of these goals, but you can by clicking on the link in the show notes below, and I hope you do. Here are some stories we couldn't leave out. Like at Wimbledon, officially called the Championships, spectators are expected to follow a refined code of conduct rooted in British tradition. I'm really bad at accents, I'm sorry. Smart casual attire is encouraged, especially on center court, where men in the royal box must wear suits and ties, and women are asked to skip hats so they don't block the views. Ripped jeans, dirty sneakers, political slogans, and selfie sticks are all banned. Like a theater, silence is expected during play, with movement allowed only during changeovers, and your phones must be kept on silent. And yes, calling it Wimbledon instead of the championships is gently frowned upon. So don't do it, especially if you're going there. Next, starting on July 2nd, Denmark will begin drafting women into military service for the first time. Under a new law, all 18-year-old Danish women will join men in a lottery-based conscription system, requiring up to 11 months of service. The move, aimed at strengthening defense, especially against threats like Russia, will bring in about 5,000 conscripts a year, with women expected to make up 25% of that group. And on Sunday, a rare roll cloud shaped like a horizontal tornado stretched across Portugal's northern and central coast, stunning beachgoers in Porto and Lisbon. The 50-mile-long Arcus cloud formed from cold air sinking during a thunderstorm and moved at about 25 miles an hour. Videos of the eerie formation went viral, and you can see it by clicking on the link in the show notes below. I love the poll section, and here is yesterday's poll question and the results. Where's your favorite place to spend a summer day? 24% said beach with a breeze. 21% said inside with glorious air conditioning. 16% said porch with a book. 13% said lake on a float. 13% said other. 7%, which is how I voted, said rooftop with a drink. And 6% said silent at a convent. Good for you. Oh, that would be nice. Someday I'm going to have to tell you about the time that I volunteered at a convent with nuns in high school. And I'm not even Catholic, so that was a very fun experience. But here is the poll question for today. Can you guess what the Flyover's reader growth was in the past year? Was it just a bump, about 1.4%? Was it a steady climb, 36.1%? How about big momentum at 61.3%? Or a massive leap at 136%? Wow, I actually don't know. I mean, I've only been with the Flyover since April doing this podcast. And so I actually don't know the answer to that. But I guess if I was going to guess, I'm going to go with big momentum, 61.3%. That is how I'm going to guess. But by the way, you should guess and you can vote right below in the show notes, There's going to be a link right there and I will read tomorrow's answers in the show. Here's today's trivia question. How many copies of the original Declaration of Independence still exist today? The answer, only 25 known copies of the original Dunlap broadside still exist. About 200 were printed the night of July 4th in 1776 and rushed across the colonies. But today, those surviving copies are among the rarest and, of course, most valuable documents in American history. Wow, I didn't know there are only 25 left. That's incredible. That's it for the Flyover Podcast. Thank you for watching, listening, sharing, and rating the show. 5-star reviews help too, of course. I will see you tomorrow with more headlines and just looking ahead a little bit into the weekend. We understand that it is a holiday weekend, so Amy Hess will not be doing a show on Saturday, but she will be doing one on Sunday. I will see you tomorrow with more headlines, and thank you so much for flying with us.